Welcome, everybody, to the Advanced Selling Podcast, the longest-running sales training podcast in podcast history. My name is Bryan Neal.
I'm Bill Caskey.
We are here every week for your listening enjoyment. Glad you're here. If you're new, welcome to the show. We've got about 700-ish or so episodes for you to catch up on. I love when we get emails from listeners that say, hey, I'm on season 4, episode 2, which is 2012.
Which we recall very clearly.
And you mentioned a tool. Could I get my hands on that? I'm like, yeah. If you find my my hard drive that's in a landfill in Shelbyville, Indiana, you can have the tool. No problem.
You take your stuff to Shelby
I
County?
don't.
Do you really?
What do they call it? I had a client who did that. They destroy computers. You know what it's called? I don't know if he made this up.
No.
Assured destruction.
Oh.
Assured. I always thought that was a clever industry name.
I've always heard of mutually assured destruction, but I thought that was about the Russians.
So let's see. A couple things you need to know. First of all, if you have not or are not involved in our Insider program that gets together live the first Friday of every month, you need to be there. We've got about 75 or so members of that group. It's a great group. I've learned also, Bill, I think you know this. Do you know there are little subgroups that meet? Mm-hmm. I just was with another person. They're like, yeah, I'm in the subgroup of Insider. People get together on their own, and they're from all over the world. Mm-hmm. It's really great. So go to our website, advancedsellingpodcast.com. Check out the Insider group. Economically, it's just ridiculously valuable, I think, for what you pay versus what you get. And you get me and Bill live. In person.
There on the last week's call, there were 3 people who had gotten together, and they had each created their own sales process with each other's help. And they were in 3 different industries. It didn't matter. They just none of them had a sales process, and we've talked about that. And they got together, and over a couple of sessions, they built it. And one guy has already delivered it to the prospect several times. And I would shout out to him, but I can't remember who it was. But yeah, it's really that's the thing we love about the community is that. Yeah, we can teach you all something, but you also can learn from each other.
Yeah. So as you're listening to this episode, you're like, I need to check that out. Go to advancedsellingpodcast.com. Look for the little button that says Insider and join us. Join us for sure.
So here's a question that I have been wrestling with for the better part of 20 years. And ever since the recycling craze happened probably 30 years ago, I don't know, 40, 10, whatever it was. And so I have this philosophy that, and I've probably mentioned it on the show, that I really do believe that the yellow top cans, the recycle, and the blue top cans, which are the standard trash, all end up in the same landfill.
Oh, okay.
I really do believe it.
Yeah.
And here's how I know. Because when we have a recycling like a can or a milk carton or something, we always rinse it out.
Yes.
We always feel like that's the least we can do before we dump it in there. But there's one type of can you can literally not rinse out, and that's peanut butter. So my question is there someone in that recycling warehouse that all they do all day long is clean out those fricking peanut butter bottles?
I have it. So first of all, I have a whole thing about recycling that I'd love to get someone that knows more than I do. I'm just applying logic here because does your recycling, there's a separate truck. Right. So if we had 50 trucks in the fleet, now we have 100. Those trucks, to me, look like they burn a lot of gas. They just do. They got big tires on them. A lot of smoke comes out of the top of them. Right.
I think I know where you're going with this.
And we also have 2 trash cans, both of which are made out of plastic.
Oil.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And I don't know where the logic there doesn't foot for me. Maybe it does. Maybe the math works. It just seems like it would have to be a lot for the math to work for all the extra stuff that we're doing. Extra plastic, extra tires, extra fuel, all to redo. Right. And then when you process the recycling, it burns a bunch of fuel too. So I'm like, what are we? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And I think the price of recycling has come down.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these companies are probably saying we can't get out of it.
No.
I mean, just from a pure PR, we can't get out of it. So we're just going to burn. But
to your direct question though about the peanut butter, which I agree, you get 2 options here. One, now, unfortunately, you don't have a dog anymore, correct?
True.
I take a peanut butter jar and I cut it in half, put it down. It is completely spotless. Yeah. When the dog gets done with it, they have a way to get every nook and cranny of peanut butter out of the jar. Most of my dog friends would know that, I know. And then the second thing, now this is more fun. Take vanilla ice cream or any ice cream of your flavor if you like peanut butter on it. take a couple scoops and put it in there and just shake it up a whole bunch, and that peanut
Turned
butter will
into a
melt.
little,
Absolutely, a little
I
treat.
like that.
Try that one out.
I like that a lot better.
Yes, yep.
Yeah,
For
the
you
first one.
listeners, yep. We're going to turn this into a things I learned on TikTok,
Yes.
little hacks.
Yes.
Seen that are life hacks.
But would the ice cream actually dissolve the peanut butter? Because a
You
lot of it's
just
on
got to
the
try it.
outside.
You got to try it because I think I don't know if it's the stickiness, but it works. Believe me, it works.
I can see. We could put that and then freeze it and then put a popsicle stick in it and then freeze it. And now you've got like a peanut butter popsicle stick.
Shaped like a peanut butter jar.
Millions of
Oh my
dollars.
gosh,
Okay.
that's funny. All right, topic today.
Your topic.
Yeah, so we this is a thoughtful topic, but you as a listener, I think you really need to step back from this and start to think about how does this apply to me and how will it apply to me? What do I need to do now to be ready for later when it comes to the whole state of sales as a function in a company? And here's where this is going, and Bill and I just decided we're just going to riff on this today. Is there seems to be a very, very very, very popular trend right now where the whole sales process is, one, being automated, and two, being combined and rolled together with the marketing function and also then the delivery function and client success, especially in SaaS companies. And we thought we'd talk about that because I think if you're in professional selling right now, depending upon where you are in your career, you're going to be impacted by this in some way. And so we want to give you our thoughts on where we think it is and where it's headed, and then maybe some advice on what you should do to prepare yourself for that. So do you want to start?
I'm just wondering if there's a way to categorize the selling organizations. Like if I've got a territory of 5 counties and I sell heavy equipment, machinery, that might be different than if I've got a territory of 17 states and I'm calling on dental offices, and I will rely more on marketing there because I can't get to them physically, so I have to get to them digitally.
Yes.
So I think you're going to have to take into account your own category of business and the segment and how you go to market, because some things we'll say may not apply to you and others might.
Yes.
Because we're not making universal blanket statements like everybody's going to need to have a podcast. No. But we think some salespeople should have podcasts, especially if you have lots of prospects and lots of customers over a large geographic area. It's the best way, or one of the best ways, to communicate. So, but if you've got 3 clients and they've only got 3 people per, then a podcast makes no sense.
Yes.
So, yeah, I like that. I think the first thing I would say, though, too, is marketing. You know, you mentioned in the pre-show, we got together 4 or 5 hours ago, and we went through this whole thing. Is that marketing and digital is becoming more a part of the upfront component of the process. I think there's always going to be room and need for a human being in the process, but I'm not sure knocking on doors, generating leads that way is the way of the future. I think that's the way of the past.
Oh, yeah. I would agree with that. I think if I think of things that apply in all cases, so what's not going to go away is a buyer's process, and this is in Bill's book. I know this buying process of going from unaware to aware to comprehension, conviction, action. So you go from unaware to aware and aware to comprehension. That understand that's always going to happen. The question is, how is it going to happen? In the past, it all happened with the salesperson really showing up cold, went from unaware to aware in an instant, saying, "I'm here. Can we talk?" That's the old way to do that. Now, buyers are getting down into that comprehension conviction phase on their own with no interaction from a human at all, which then you're like, okay, so then the sales function lives over the top of that. So you as a salesperson have to think, how am I making myself and my knowledge available to people so that when they are working their own path of understanding from unaware to aware to comprehension, they find you.
Yeah, so the question, I'm sorry, the question there is, can you help them get from unaware that you exist to aware to comprehending the nature of the problem to conviction digitally? Or does a human being have to be there to guide and walk? And I think in some businesses you can do it digitally.
Absolutely. And I think, and this is where the step back, I think for me is really important in all businesses. I think a real dangerous thing for any salesperson to think these days is if they start a phrase, well, in my business, or in our industry, and Bill and I hear this all the time. I personally think it's 100% of the time. We get a new client on board, And early in the process, at some point, the VP of sales or the CEO or whoever it is, or a new sales rep will say, Bill, I know you work with a lot of companies. Our business is a little bit different. Our business is probably different than them. So we hear that. I think that's a really dangerous thing to think, because it starts to focus you on the 10% that's different, not the 90% that's the same. The 90% that's the same says, I've got to find a way now to digitally educate. So if you're thinking, well, my people, like we hear this all the time. Well, my buyers aren't really on LinkedIn. My buyers aren't on LinkedIn, Bill. And they are. That's an absolute fallacy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there was a time when we said that, and fewer people say that now. But you're right. It could. What's the next thing? Mm-hmm. My buyers aren't on Clubhouse. Okay, maybe
Right.
maybe they are. Maybe they aren't. I
Yeah.
don't know. How can you make that blanket statement? You're not on Clubhouse.
Correct.
But that doesn't mean your buyer isn't.
Yes.
I was talking to a guy the other day who is not a client, and he's not going to be, but he's just a friend of mine in the business, and he said that what he's doing now is whenever someone wants to talk to him, maybe they reach out, they see an article, or they want to have a conversation about doing business with him. He has a 30-minute video. You can call it a webinar, but it's really just a video where he sends people to, and he will not talk to them until they watch the video.
There you
Because he says, I need to bring them along. If I'm going to spend 30 minutes on the phone, why wouldn't I spend 5 minutes on the phone and have them spend 25 minutes watching this really well done video that kind of brings them along, so that by the time I have the face-to-face or the phone call, the person is brought along to the point where we're just kind of working out the details.
It's fantastic.
Versus us getting on the phone, them calling us, hey, I just want to learn a little bit more about you, John. Well, let me give you a run through here. Can you come over and we'll join hands and we'll sing Kumbaya and have some kombucha? What is that? Bubbly? What is that? Perrier? What is that?
I've got all the millennial drinks over here, don't I? I don't know. Bubbly.
Bubbly?
This is bubbly. Is it bubbly or bubbly?
Well, it's got the U is kind of a half
it is.
U.
Bubbly. This is Pepsi's version of LaCroix. And then the old school Perrier. This was only because they didn't have LaCroix at CVS when I bought it. So.
Yeah, Kelly, my daughter, is a big LaCroix fan. She loves LaCroix.
You don't like LaCroix?
Really? I don't like anything fizzy, really.
You don't
for
really?
Some reason. No.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, sorry.
Funny part is LaCroix has been around since the 80s. Do you know that?
Really?
Yeah, LaCroix's been around forever and just now caught the buzz.
Huh.
It's kind of interesting, right? I'm just waiting for Tab to come back.
Tab good. Royal Crown?
Mm-hmm.
RC. As opposed to Crown Royal. As opposed to Crown Royal.
Diet RC.
Okay, back to our topic, away from the beverage industry. What else? So
so I think one thing that you as a listener, if you're a salesperson, need to embrace is this merging of all these functions together. And you got to start to realize where you, as a sales professional, add the most value to the chain. And so some of the upfront stuff is going to be automated these days. In fact, we talk about demos. Demos can be automated. If you're a salesperson and you do a demo, and if you record your demos and watch yourself, and if you're basically reading slides and then clicking, and reading slides and clicking and showing, that can be automated. Yeah. I don't need you to do that. And so you need to really take inventory of oh my gosh, what do I do that is real valuable to the other person? Because we all this stuff can be automated. And I'm trying to get you as a listener ahead of the game here to think of, okay, you've got to be a critical thinker. You've got to be able to tie a demo into a person's life. That becomes harder for a computer to do. Yeah. It'll be possible at some point, if that makes sense.
No, it does, and I think that's the VP of sales roles too, the sales manager, CEO. If you're in a business and you're running a sales organization, you have to be thinking of these things, because your sales team is not. They may be listeners to the podcast, but they're thinking, I got numbers to make this month or this quarter, and I don't have time to think about critical thinking for the next 6 months or 5 years. You had better be doing that.
Yes.
And if you're not seeking out for people who have a sense of what the future of selling is going to look like, then you're going to be trying to imagine this in a dark room with no vision.
Yes.
And so, but don't leave this up to your sales team. I mean, sales team, if you're listening to this, you need to be thinking about what skills do I need to succeed and master the future. But if you're a VP of sales, you need to be thinking about it at a whole different level.
There's no doubt. So this is good because I just hung up a coaching call. You saw me walking around here a minute ago talking to one of my clients.
Drinking my bubbly. Little flute.
Flute. I have one of those. We have flutes at home.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised you don't have them here.
Champagne.
You're a flute kind of guy, especially when you take your finger and roll it around.
Our brother and sister-in-law, Steph's brother, for our wedding got us it's called a shambong. A shambong. It's a real fancy, like a beer bong thing. So you pour like a glass of champagne in there and it's curved. It's called a shambong. It's actually really cool. Shambong. So I was talking to this client, and what came up was we have created a little bit of a monster here, especially in the SaaS world. And for those of you, if you're measuring sales behavior,
KPIs.
Yeah, KPIs. Thank you. And you're looking at a machine, and you're going, boy, this person does 100 calls a day, 50 calls a day. They make this, they get that, all the front end stuff, which I am a fan of to a point. If you're doing all that and that's what you're relying on, I think we've created this monster because one, CEOs want that because it's automated. They think, oh, I've got 100 equals 50 equals 40 equals 30, boom. The problem, though, is it strips all the critical thinking away from the people doing it. So the people that we've plugged in to execute these processes, and we said, follow the process, say the script, they become robotic, and they strip all the value out of them as a human and the ability to think critically, I should say.
And at the same time, the companies are advertising our people are our most valuable asset.
Yes.
And they're not. They're truly not your most valuable asset. They should be, as long as they're thinking correctly. But I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
So what about the use of technology on the back end? So a salesperson sells something and it gets delivered, whether it's an actual piece of equipment or a solution, there's engagement. What's the technology play? Because you work with more client success people than I do.
Yes. So the use of video on the back end in terms of a specific technology to me is better than no other. And so many people on the delivery side of the work, so you talk about client success or account management or back-end implementation specialists, people like that tend to be very email heavy. They tend to perform that way, and then they tend to justify that by saying, well, my client prefers email. And we've got too much evidence that shows us that the responsiveness that comes from video versus email is crazy. I mean, go through the stats if you want, but it's really, really, really strong. It's all in favor of video. You see it on LinkedIn too, right? Yeah. You if you write a post and put a video up, it's a 3 to 5x engagement level.
You can't fight that data for any longer. It's there. So correct. you can pretend like my people they have flip phones and they can't watch video. Okay, maybe they do. Yeah. But you can't refute that anymore.
No. So that's one thing. That's the technology that I would say. So if you're on the back end of things, or if you're a salesperson listening to this, and you want to improve and enhance the experience your customers have with your client success team, send them this and tell them they need to start doing their communication via video. At least a balanced amount of that. Mm-hmm. That's one thing. Yeah. And then the second thing is, to steal a page from the Challenger Sale book, is our client success and account management people, they have to be teaching and educating customers as they go. So they have to be sharing knowledge. They have to be saying, hey, Bill, I got this, like the call we just had. This client of ours wants some sample contracts from some technology companies. I'm like, hey, we've got a little technology stack here. We've got 4 or 5 products that we've signed. Let's get them copies of the contract so they can look at it. They're trying to formulate their own. That's a give on purpose. We don't do contracts for a living. Mm-hmm. So you've got to make sure, You've got to make sure that you're bringing things that they're not thinking of. Is the lesson there. Yeah. That's really, really important because most people are like, is everything okay, Bill? Are you happy with the service? Is the software going? Oh, it's great. Okay, thanks. Talk to you next quarter. That's how it goes.
Yeah, I think that whole customer experience thing is something we don't get into much on the podcast. We should probably have somebody who specializes in that, but that's a really good area of what kind of experience are your customers having. We talk about it in the prospect experience up front.
Yeah.
What kind of experience are you giving your prospects as you usher them and guide them through the sales process?
Right.
But then at some point they become a client, then what?
Yep.
And we need to be mindful of that. If you have not joined our LinkedIn group, go to advancedsellingpodcast.com/LinkedIn. That'll take you right there. 11,924 people are in that group. And there's some pretty lively discussions there. Some fisticuffs break out sometimes. Digital fisticuffs? No, not really. But make sure you join that group, and also go to advancedsellingpodcast.com for all of our latest stuff, including the Insider program that Bryan talked about earlier. We'd love to have you in that. See you next time.
See you. Bye.